Yo, 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 hello, and welcome back to the Lenko Show. This is episode number 96. I'm joined again by Chris. Welcome back to the podcast, mate. Been a long time. Where have you been?
Thank you, brother. It has been a long time. I had a brief remission, but I'm back now. I'm back.
Well, I was about to do a full-on rebrand and just call it the Alex Lankowski Performance Podcast.
To be fair, that probably would have been better. People would have preferred that more. It would have attracted more people in.
I'm not too sure about that, but yeah, it's good to have you back anyway.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. It's nice to see your tanned face on a screen. It's probably the first time I've ever seen you looking browner than me,
Well,
and I'm not brown.
this is the advantage of just walking outside with the dog for 5 minutes. That's what happens to me.
There you go.
I have to
Great.
say, if I'd have run across Africa, I would be a different colour by now.
I tell you, mate, when you put up the story last week about him being called the hardest geezer and he should have changed his name to the hardest ginger or something like that, mate, I was laughing.
Not even the hardest ginger, just like it's just the way that the headline reads, isn't it? Like, world's hardest man, self-declared as well, I think, which is a bit weird. Like, imagine calling yourself like the most handsome person on the planet. Like, you just think, what a dick. But anyway, like the world's hardest geezer like hits the tabloids, and it's like he's run across Africa. All right, cool. What's he going to do this week? Fight a shark, mint. Right, I'd expect that from the world's hardest geezer. Whereas if you said to me, bloody ginger man runs across Africa, I'd be like, my God, like that is fascinating.
It's actually really true. Like even it from a marketing perspective, by the way, I've had very little marketing training. But if he'd have put if his name was softest geezer, even that would have alerted me. I'd have been like the softest geezer has run across Africa. Like I'd have been well impressed.
Yeah. And you also have to think like what kind of a world just choking on my own words. What kind of a world are we living in where I mean like the scale of the achievement these days means pretty much nothing. Like the man has run the length of Africa. And granted, I kind of look at that and think, what's the fucking point of that? But taking a year out of your life to go and do it. I mean, fair enough. He's set himself up for everything now. Like he'll be on podcasts, he'll write a book, he'll be on Netflix, he'll be on loads of different talk shows. Man, he's made a life for himself and he's raised a little bit of money for charity. But here's the thing: he's made less money for charity than an old bloke walking a lap of his garden every day during COVID.
Yeah,
What
that's
the
good.
bloody hell is that all about? Like,
So
honestly,
I've had an idea now. When you said that, it made me think that you could get him on here, you could tell him that and rip into his whole thing, and you could genuinely talk to him about all these things, and you could even go as far as saying, "What is your scientific definition for the hardest geezer?" Because running, does that translate to hardness? Like if we were to have an x-axis and a y-axis, if you can run far, does that make you harder? Or if you can't run far, are you not hard? Like, because if there's a scientific backing behind it, we could make some really fucking hard people out there.
I mean, if he was to have a fight with someone from the SAS after having doing that bit of a run, or even just a bit of a rumble down at his local jiu-jitsu club or something like that, like how's he going to fare? I mean, in fairness, like respect to him, like it is a very very difficult challenge. But for me, I will class it as a difficult challenge. I want to be able to look at something and go, not sure I could do that. Like realistically, for me, Ross Edgley swimming around the UK was a bigger achievement. That was harder. Like if you were to say, right, you're going to be in a boat for the next 6 months or whatever it is, and you're going to swim around the coast of the United Kingdom in all kinds of different conditions, water full of shit, because that's what the government are good at doing, and you're ultimately you're on your own, and that is going to be really really fucking tough. Like, and I'm not the best swimmer, but could I get out on a road every day and just trot a few miles or run for 12 to 16 hours? I reckon I could. I reckon if I had no other obligations, if I was in that situation, I reckon I probably could do that. I mean, I'd get sunburnt to fuck running through Africa, and there's a bit more meat on me. I might be eaten by a lion, but I look at it and I think I like my chances. Now, I'm fucked if this podcast ever goes viral and someone sponsors me to do it, because then I've got no choice but to eat my words. But I would also be very interested to know what it's done to his body physically from start to the end. So if Netflix have got hold of it, Netflix, if you're listening to me, if you've got hold of it and you've done some testing data to look at him as a person, as a human, as a specimen at the start, number one question, was he the world's hardest geezer? Or is he now the hardest geezer? Like what and what made him that way? And what changes has he actually experienced as a result? I would like to know the answer to those things. But anyway, we'll
Well, actually, I've got one last question that would be really intriguing on that, and then we can move on.
go on.
So, hear me out here. This is an abstract one. You take the hardest geezer, right? He runs across Africa. Is he now even harder, or because he's done running for the last year and however many days, is he now not as hard because he's fatigued?
Well, definitely. I mean, yeah, he's run the length of Africa, but let's be honest, it's not like he's run across the width of Europe, is it? So, you know, he's got
Interesting. Well,
he's got
he's done it in the one continent where probably 90% of the population could also probably achieve the same thing.
he's just surrounded by pacemakers.
They probably look at it thinking, I do that every day.
Probably looking at him thinking, just laughing. Anyway, today's episode, we're actually going to be talking about strength training and what how it kind of sets the foundation for everything. I know we've discussed many variations of this previously, but I think it's always useful to go over. And so some of the things that people get in their own heads that are completely wrong, and a few things that I've raised on previous podcasts with people. And you can see how people's minds get twisted and warped. And something as an S&C coach, when I was working in football and multiple different sports, people get in their own way from doing things that are going to be advantageous, not just useful, but advantageous and actually give them an edge and help them get to the next level. So we're going to be digging into that. So, Chris, I believe you had some questions you wanted to kick off, and we'll just chit chat.
Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, Alex is a very good strength and conditioning coach and actually has quite a lot of knowledge in this area. So we're going to be asking him some questions and he's going to delve a little bit deeper into what these sort of things mean. So first one is dead simple. Let's just make sure everyone's on the same page. How would you define strength, Alex? I feel like a lot of people out there, they've got their ideas as to what it is. And generally, most people, their idea is, it means maximal 1 rep max bench press. How much can you squat? How much can you deadlift? So can you just clear that up for us, please? What on earth is strength?
Well, first of all, thanks for putting me on the pedestal. Second of all, I have no idea. I don't know what I'm talking about. I have no. Um, I mean, strength is very in terms of what you're aiming to do. You're just aiming to apply the maximum amount of force you possibly can, and then you can measure it with weight lifted, work done, and in terms of how it translates across to everyday life, it's different for different people. And the problem with strength is it is so specific. So if you don't, you could be incredibly strong, but if you don't practice a certain movement, when it comes to doing that movement, you are possibly not going to score as highly as you might think because the carryover isn't always there. There's like, for instance, if we were to talk about, should we say, if we've got someone that does push-ups every single day and just does loads and loads of it, like you might be able to do 1,000 in a day or something, that will not necessarily translate across to a really good bench press 1 rep max because you've not had that exposure with the extremely high weight. So the way to do that would be then start adding weight to your push-ups. Wear a weighted vest, put some plates on your back, ask someone to stand on you. There are different variations of it, but I would generally go along being able to exert the maximum amount of force you can physically squeeze and eke out of your system. And I think this leads to the first kind of misconception where people think, oh, if I do strength training, I'm just going to get big and bulky. That is not true. So the big thing that you're trying to train, whenever you're training speed or strength, you are training the nervous system. You're training to become more efficient at movement patterns and activate muscles in a specific sequence and order and be able to relax other muscles at the same time to allow you to move as efficiently as possible from A to B, or to move away as efficiently as possible from A to B. And when you come to strength training, being able to educate your body into the movement patterns, so this is where typically periodization wise, you're going to be going practicing the movement. You might work anywhere from 8 to 15 reps, get loads of volume, loads of experience, loads of time under tension in these specific movement patterns. You will possibly do loads of isometrics, build a little bit of size, because a bigger muscle has the capacity and the potential to be a stronger muscle. But the key there is potential. So the types of muscle fibers you're looking at developing, you want the big, thick type 2 that you're just going to be able to grunt the workout as hard, as fast as possible. And ultimately, you have to be able to activate a higher percentage of those muscle fibers. So you could look at someone who is really, really big, really, really strong by appearance, and then compare them with someone who is a little bit more, shall we say, slender, streamlined, a little bit more cut. And you might think, well, he's just a skinny bastard. He ain't going to be that strong. But if you were to test the two at something really specific, so if the skinny kid constantly practice bench press and does nothing else, versus the big dude that does bits of everything and loads of general hypertrophy training, you might get different results. The results might surprise you. So skinny doesn't necessarily mean weak. You can be incredibly strong and incredibly streamlined. Like, look at some of the best Olympic weightlifters. They have to fit into weight categories, so they have to be cut, they have to be lean, they have to fulfill that kind of criteria to be able to compete at that weight, and then still shift as much weight as they physically can. So I think weightlifting is probably a great example.
Yeah, and I think with that, along those same lines as well, like you were saying with the skinny guy and the big guy, like you can be strong. Some people can be strong in different ways. Some people can be strong in different positions and different shapes and things like that. But if you can be strong through a bigger range, for example, would you say that translates to being stronger? Do you think it's more, I guess my actual question is it more beneficial to be strong through a wide, full range, or to be strong in a shorter, tighter range?
Well, it depends what the short tight range is. So if you were to say to me, I'm only gonna, so if me and you did an experiment and I go, right, I'm gonna squat to 90 degrees or to parallel. And
Are
then you
we
go,
following Joel Seedman's programming here? Is that what's going on?
no, you can fuck off. Don't even mention him ever again. You can go and boil his head in a tank of lava. So like if we were to do an experiment where you go, right, okay, um, me, I'm gonna squat to parallel, and I'm only ever gonna go to parallel. I'm not gonna go deeper than that. And then you go, right, okay, well, I'm gonna squat ass to grass.
Which
And
I
then
do.
we go through 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever you want, of multiple times a week, let's say 3 times a week. We're hitting that stimulus, we're hitting those positions. I guarantee by the end of that program, I will be using the heavier weight because my range isn't as much. So in terms of uh, position, the length of the muscle, the if you were to go off the sliding filament theory, the cross bridging between the muscles, I'm going to find it easier to push out of that 90-degree position. It's a more powerful position rather than you who is sat in the bottom of your squat with your muscles at length, or in some cases really, really short. So for instance, your quads would be really, really long. You're going to have less cross bridges. It's going to be more difficult for you to get out of that bottom position. So automatically, I'm winning. In terms of strength and maximal force, I'm winning. Now, if we were to then have a test at the end of that, and those two different types of tests, if we were to go, right, okay, who can squat the most amount of weight from to parallel, it would be me. I would win that hands down because that's the range that I practiced in. There's the specifics of it. Whereas if we were to then go, right, okay, now you've got to go ass to grass and you've got to go a little bit deeper. If I've not had any exposure to working through to that range, there's every chance that you win that purely on the specifics of having practiced in that range. And this is where in strength programs or like overall training program, a lot of the programming that I do with my athletes is we will work through various ranges. We will use because I mean, realistically in sport, most of the time, you don't need to be going that deep. You just need to be cranking up the weight,
Yep.
cranking out as much force as possible. So, utilizing belt squats, front squats, box squats, and not necessarily going ass to grass. But in terms of the general picture as a whole, is it useful to go ass to grass and change up the stimulus? Absolutely. Like if you wanted to do a deload and take a little bit of strain off, you could reduce the weight because you're going to have to if you're going ass to grass. You could just reduce the weight, perform the same amount of reps and sets, and job done. You've saved yourself a little bit.
Yeah. And I think a really good thing with that as well, just to finish that point off, is there's a skill component as well. Let's take, for example, for you, Alex, you're a kicker for Great Britain and for Manchester Titans.
Thank you.
If we were to remove the skill element and I were to kick against Alex, and I don't mean kick a ball against him, I mean I kick a ball and then he kicks a ball and he kicks a ball further, yes, he's obviously got a lot of power. He's generating a lot of power, but that is an expression of strength through that movement and that position as well. If we remove the skill element, if we add the skill element back in, he'd kick it even further than me because I don't do that, and he has a lot of practice through that as well. So it just goes to show there's obviously loads of different ways of looking at it. They're all very specific to who you are, what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. But the bottom line is that same bottom end definition, which is exerting maximal force against whatever you're exerting against. Yeah.
And that's where when I was alluding to the sequencing, the timing of movements, the ability of the nervous system to say shut down, activate, deactivate, like and basically get everything in sync to the point where the timing of the movement is fast, efficient, and you're not necessarily holding yourself back. So, for instance, um, if you're on a knee drive through your sprint and you're pulling hard through the hip, if you've got your glutes and your hamstrings really, really tight on the back end and they're not letting it go, you're going to slow yourself down. You're essentially running with the brakes on. So if I'm kicking and I'm in my backswing, I'm about to start swinging through, and my hamstrings aren't going to let go and switch off, or the timing isn't right, and I'm not going to be able to flow all the way through the ball, that's going to slow me down. And also, they need to be able to kick in again at the opposite end when I'm at full extension. Otherwise, my leg's just going to come off. So the timing of it all has to be right again, because if they kick in early and the hamstring switch on earlier on the follow through, my follow through isn't going to be as far. It's not going to be as rangy. It's not going to be as fluid. And I'm going to be decelerating as I'm still trying to get all the work through the ball. So the timing and the sequence of it all. And this is where, again, we were speaking before we actually started recording this. If you were a power lifter, then you're you're shaking your head. I know you are, but like if you were a power lifter, your strength specifics would be very, very simple because you would go bench press, squat, deadlift, and then some variations of it. Your rep ranges, you would be in the very, very low reps, high sets, very, very high weight, 90% and above. You're very rarely dropping out of that into the 80s, and certainly very, very rarely dropping below that with high rest time. So your bracket of specificity is very, very much nailed in, and you do not want to deviate from that too much. It's the same with anyone that practices any specific sport, anyone who's a professional. You want some general things in your plan and some general things in your programming, but your sport overall has to do the talking. If the gym, in this sense, is your sport, if you're a weightlifter, if you're a power lifter, then you need to be able to just stick to those specifics and not branch out too far. You don't need to do the random shit. You don't need to be doing CrossFit, for example.
Yeah, so actually, I'm really like I sent something to you while you were saying there because like you transmitted across. So I was thinking as you said that, then it was making me think about a conversation I had with someone the other day who has recently started a new sport and completely changed the strength exercises they were doing. So to touch on what you were saying about there, like strength training on the whole, you are trying to train like joints, muscles, musculoskeletal system, nervous system, etc. There are movements that are very specific to what you are trying to get stronger at. But for the most part, you don't actually need to be doing loads of super crazy things in the gym to focus on getting stronger. If your focus is building strength, focus on building strength. And if you are training for a sport, obviously you want to make sure you are doing drills and make sure you have exposure to the sport where you are practicing playing the sport and doing the sport. And you will do some stuff where you might do, I mean, I wouldn't say do weighted drills, but you might do some form of resisted exercises where you're practicing the same positions and practicing putting yourself in the same body shapes. But for the most part, you don't need to start going out and doing all these crazy different things like proper elusive exercises, like I wouldn't even know, like doing single leg weighted, hopping on one leg and practicing swinging your leg as fast as you can, like to try and build some kind of power and strength in that position. Like it's just silly. You practice the sport, you practice kicking as hard as you can, you practice your kicking accuracy, you practice your technique, and then you do leg strength work. Would that be a fair statement, an accurate statement?
Yeah, yeah, pretty simple. So, um, I, again, if we were to pick on purely kicking, there are certain ways that I break up my training. So, in terms of the structure of each session, highest nervous system demand comes first. So, if it's speed, that generally ranks at the top. So, if it's sprinting, that'd be number one. Once that's been done, got a little bit of a break, a little bit of recovery. Then there might be some sort of power lift where it might be a hang clean or a hang power clean. Again, relates fairly nicely across to kicking because you're able to actually get your hips in the kind of position that you're going to be in before you then start that strike through ball. So your hips are in a decent position and then you're getting the hips through and you're getting that pop, which is exactly what you want to do when you're kicking a ball. You want to be able to get the hips through it and put your full body through it. Then once the power stuff has been done, again, I might start to generally kind of combine these two together. So I might have a speed-based exercise, which is just a body weight jump. So it's a fast contraction, triple extension through the ankle, knee, and hip, and pair that up. So have a short break after like let's just say I did box jumps, for example. That might be exercise number one. That takes care of the speed stimulus. And then exercise number two might be a trap bar deadlift, which will be very, very high weight, very, very heavy. I think I was doing some deadlifts in your gym the other day, uh, working on the heavier end of the scale, lower reps, short rest after that, and then back to exercise number one. So you're taking care of the speed and the strength side of things. And then away from that, depending on how much kicking I'm doing, how much volume I'm getting in on the training pitch, that will dictate what I then do in the gym. And that's a key rule for people to actually understand is that if you're playing a sport, the sport comes first. What you do in the gym is see it, you need to see it this way. What you do in the gym is to put your body in the optimal position to be able to perform on the pitch. It's not to be able to get really good results and really high scores in the gym. It's to be able to do the very best you possibly can on the pitch. So, uh, I would like one of the things I've been playing around with at the minute is something called the monkey foot, which you wear it as like a little bit of a boot, and you can attach a dumbbell. It will grip a dumbbell underneath your foot, and then from there, I've done various different leg exercises, whether it's leg swings, hamstring pulls, leg extensions, and just played around with that and being able to get a little bit more specific with some of the strength work. But coming away from that, simple stuff works. If you would, if you all you had access to was a leg extension, sit on a leg extension, go really, really heavy, make it burn a little bit, put a bit of size on your quads, make sure they're really, really strong, and then go and be really, really good at kicking a ball dead hard.
Dead ad. Yeah, I think I recall my first interaction with what you were summarizing there was with Chris Edmondson, who's on the board, was on the board at the time, for oh my God, I've just forgotten his name. I cannot believe it. Strength and conditioning course.
UKCA.
Yeah, oh my days. How have I just forgotten the UKCA accreditation? Anyway, he was on the board there. And he was explaining how he worked. Sorry to all strength and conditioning coaches listening. Wow. But he basically explained his role working with, I believe it was Wigan Rugby at a time. And he was saying his role as a strength and conditioning coach, unfortunately, was not what anyone outside of strength and conditioning would expect it to be, which is to make the players like super strong and make sure they can lift heavy weights and tackle hard and stuff. Unfortunately, like it's changed a little bit over more recent years. But at the top end of sport, it was actually to make sure the players aren't getting injured. Like, and just because people didn't necessarily believe in strength conditioning as much, and it takes away from exactly what you said. If you're spending time in the gym, you ain't practicing playing your sport. You're spending time in the gym, and you want to do most of your sport stuff. If you're trying to be the best at that sport, unfortunately, the way it is you got to be practicing that sport more. There's people out there playing that sport every single day. They're not in the gym every day. You are still strength training in a way while doing sport, not necessarily in the same way. You want to do a little bit of strength work to boost and enhance the results that you get from your actual sport. You would say that's accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this kind of comes down to some specifics of in-season work. So American football wise, like a lot of my athletes who I'm coaching um, will understand this from their programming, but during the preseason, we try to get loads of volume in, um, plenty of sprinting, because there's no American football sessions going off, there's no contact, there's very, very little that's going to cause stress or injury other than the actual training in the gym itself. So being able to maximize that, then leading into preseason, it gets dialed back a little bit. You go to some of the more general stuff, reducing the volume a little bit, still keeping the speed working with good frequency, and still making sure we're hitting quite a hard strength stimulus, and then strengthening specific areas that are likely to get injured. So we're really, really working hard on the traps, the shoulders, um, and then the hips and the ankles, really looking after those as much as possible. Now, the shift to in-season training doesn't mean you, as soon as the season kicks off and you're getting banged up week in, week out, doesn't mean you take your foot off the gas. If anything, you need to find a different way to keep the pedal to the metal. And the best way to do that I've come across is to hit really low volume but high intensity strength work. So pick your specific lift, whether it's a trap bar deadlift, a box squat, a belt squat. I really, really love a belt squat, by the way, for just taking the load out of your spine a little bit. Um, pick your key lift and make it one that you're actually looking forward to doing. It's something you don't mind working hard at and spending a bit of time on. Don't force yourself to suffer. Do you know what I mean? Like if you don't want to do a back squat, if you want to do a Zercher squat, or you want to do a front squat, or you want to do a belt squat, do that. I have no problem with that. Like if my client opens up their program and they go, oh, says I'm front squatting today, I really don't want to be in that front rack position. Like just change the squat to something else. As long as you're working at the certain stimulus, whether it's, if it's 2 or 3 reps at 90+%, if as long as you're hitting that for that lift, I am cool with that. Then after that, so they're not going to be doing tons and tons of reps, the volume isn't high, then the way that we're going to accumulate some volume and still try and build muscle, still try and put on some size, is using loads of time and attention, which comes in the form of isometric holds. So I'm literally talking holding positions for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, up to 2 minutes. And if you like, you can do that with a power off hold, a chin up hold, a push up hold, a split squat hold, any variation you want. Just hold that position at that joint angle that is going to be beneficial and translate nicely into power. So we were talking before with regards to squatting. at that parallel depth. If you were to take a look at the joint angles that you get into, if you were to do a jump, if you're going to hit that little dip, as soon as you get to the bottom of that dip, hold that. That's your position. Spend time in that position and strengthen that position, reinforce it. So, and then there's loads of different fancy ways you can branch out from there and add in actual reps. But I can tell you that is horrendous. However, it means you can recover and still do what you need to do on the training pitch.
Yeah, which again, I guess that ties into one of the things with the strength training. You're looking at what is the, I think, lowest amount you could do that would yield the best possible results that will allow you to recover from, like you said earlier, it's neurological. Like everything's neuromuscular and strength is certainly a neural skill as well. If you aren't recovering, you are not getting stronger.
Yep. I think you said it there perfectly as well. Strength is a skill. It is a skill. It might look brutish, but it is a skill. It's a very specific skill. Like humans are super adapters. If you lose an arm, lose a leg, you will find a way to cope with life. It might not be pretty, but you will find a way to cope. You'll still find a way to run, whether it looks more like hopping or something less conventional. You'll find a way to do what you need to do to be able to get from A to B, and you'll be able to do it quickly. Like if you've ever played through a sprained ankle, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever played through a banged up shoulder and you've had to try and tackle differently, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So strength is a skill. You have to practice it. You have to practice it frequently.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so just looking at where we are at in terms of time, are you good? Or do you want to go through? So we've got together, guys, a list of misconceptions and some other simple questions. So we can either go through if you've
Let's
got time.
let's just tackle one of the misconceptions.
Okay. Do you have a favorite misconception? In fact,
You can pick whichever one you want.
I actually have something that I'd like to add in myself that wasn't in the previous misconceptions, but I'd like to touch on because you didn't allude to this, but you made a comment about it. And one thing that is a misconception is a lot of people thinking that strength, actually, we'll go through strength and bulking up, etc. But one of the ones that I hear a lot in sport specific is when people build strength and as a byproduct, they get a little bit bigger, they build a bit of size. People thinking that will make them slower.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about
Um, I mean, it depends on how much size and bulk you're talking about. So with regards to sport, if you're talking about the ability to sprint incredibly quickly, how big do your shoulders really need to be? This is this is, this is
that?
the key thing. Like you like look at the world's best sprinters and see what they do, and look at their build. Like genetics are fundamental to you being world class. Loads of people work hard at the top level. At the top level, loads of people work hard. The big differentiator then is going to be how far will your genetics allow you to take yourself, and have you done the right things from an early enough point to give you that advantage to break through and be at the elite, be at the pinnacle of the sport. So I would say adding muscle, will it slow you down? Not necessarily. If you're adding weight, yes, it will. So if your body fat, this is the key thing because body fat is non-contractile mass. It's not useful in the sense of speed, force output, power output, endurance capacity. Like it's not useful in that sense. So if you go from being able to sprint really, really quickly at 90 kilos and 12% body fat, then you go, right, okay, well, I'm going to add a bit more muscle and you go to 94 kilos. Good jump, by the way, 4 kilos of muscle, and you're still 12% body fat, or even if your body fat increased slightly, you're not necessarily going to be a better sprinter. In fact, the best way to go probably be let's maintain muscle mass because that's a lot easier to do. Keep up the regular sprint training and reduce the amount of weight we have to carry for the distance we're aiming to run by a couple of kilos. that will make a difference. Even if it's we're talking, if it was a centimeter for every ground contact, that all adds up. Step by step, it all adds up. So, in terms of getting bulky, like the big rule that I would always follow with this is if your training has to be directed towards a specific purpose. If you're trying to get faster, you don't necessarily need to be sitting in the gym doing loads of sets of bicep curls, loads of sets of tricep extensions, loads of sets of bench pressing. You don't need to do it. What you need to be doing is being out on the track, doing loads of sprints, loads of jumps, loads of technique work, be really, really efficient at sprinting, and then add in a couple of complementary exercises in the gym, whether it's jumping, weighted jumping, heavy lifting, hang power cleans, those kinds of things. They will be really, really useful. And you can add a bit more secret sauce onto the top of that as well if you want. But I think kind of what you've said there is, I suppose kind of the question is whether bulking up will be useful for sprinting. The answer to that is no. Are there useful strength exercises that you can add into your training routine that will help you get faster? Quite possibly. But ultimately, you need to have that balance of my one sole purpose is to get faster. Every single thing I do is to make me get faster. And the
Yeah,
answer
and I think
tends to vary from
kind of
person.
what we said, kind of what we alluded to earlier as well, is the way that I see it is there's an energy requirement for everything you do, and there is a neurological and neuromuscular demand on everything that you do. And if you are trying to get faster and you've got fucking colossal muscles, there's going to be a greater requirement, a greater demand. You're going to use more oxygen and more nutrients, and overall, the taxing on the body is going to be harder because the amount of demand required for that specific thing. However, if you can fuel it and you can recover from it, and like you said, if you are, let's just take agility as an example. If you have bigger, stronger muscles, there's greater potential there. However, that greater potential requires greater demand. So it's can you utilize it and can you recover from it? And then when it comes down to training as well, if you spend most of your time doing, let's say, agility drills, let's say they are power based, as it were, they will make you super fast, super strong, and super good at that specific skill. So let's say it is like a 5-10-5, whatever, you get super, super good at that. But as it were, that is not a muscle generating or a hypertrophy stimulus exercise. Like it's just not. Like Alex alluded to earlier, looking at doing something that's around 8 to 15 reps of a very specific thing. If you're doing 5-10-5 agility drills, it's super fast, it's super snappy, it's powerful, it's not going to generate like the same level of hypertrophy as if you were to do, let's say, leg extensions. Now, if you were to do leg extensions, you can still build strength for sure. It'd be more so through that same kind of patterning. You would build your quad size, but what you're doing there is you are taking away the ability for you to train that specific thing. So, like Alex is saying, if you want to get faster, run fast. If you want to build muscle, do hypertrophy training.
Yeah.
There are things that have carryover to both. There are certainly things that you can do that will build some muscle and make you faster, etc. But you want to think, and especially like we're talking about here, if you are in a sport trying to get better at your sport, you do really want to spend the majority of your time working on your sport and using your strength training as a thing that's going to help you get better at your sport, not the focus of what you're doing, for definite.
Here's one of the other things for you to consider as well is like if you are slightly concerned about all my training is going to make me bulky and slow me down, reduce the volume. Reduce the volume, increase the strength specific stuff. Forget your accessories, bin them off. Unless it's injury prevention related, bin them off. Don't need them. Just work the specifics of the strength stuff. and make the primary focus your speed work or your on-field work or your skill specific stuff. So there's like two different ways of kind of just jotted down here that I was thinking about this. So uh, if you're sprinting, let's just take the very simplistic 100-meter sprint. If you add 10 kilos to your body weight and it's all muscle, all that extra 10 kilos still has to go through the same system. So your foot, your ankle, your calf, all the tendons through your feet, all those muscles through your feet, all the ligaments, the joints, the everything has to go through that foot contact. And if you've just added 10 kilos to that, and before, let's say if it was, well, what as a percentage, you might have added 10%, you might have added more than 10% extra work per ground contact. That is a significant amount to have to deal with. So you need to think about, is that extra mass going to be useful? If you're adding pure 10 kilos of mass to literally to your foot and to your calf, mate, fine. Go for it. That will probably actually do the trick. If you could be that specific and add that amount of mass to that body part, fair play. And I think you would be minty. You will make if we can figure that out, mate, win millions. If we can tell people how to add 10 kilos of mass to their calves. And also, what would that look like? That'd be insane.
Outrageous.
Like you think a human head probably weighs about 10 kilos. Like if you were to put your head on your calf on top of on top of the muscle that's already there, that'd be that like imagine quads for calves. That's what we're talking. These
Episode 100 of the Lenko podcast will be how to add 10 kilos of lean mass to your calves.
that'd be sick. That'd be insane. Right.
And think about it.
Any volunteers for Project Baby Cow coming here as well. And then the final bit in terms of like how specifics of lifting and strength training actually translates across. If we were to say, right, your trap bar deadlift, we're going to add 10 kilos of weight to that, then going to make you record your sprint time. Got a really good sprint time, bang on 10 seconds. Well done. Let's go and add 10 kilos to your deadlift and then go and sprint again. Will you be faster? Maybe. If you were to add 10 kilos to your body weight and add a weighted vest and still run the same 100 meters, you are going to be slower.
Yeah.
It's all about the specifics and how useful is the extra added weight. It's like if you like Formula One, if you were to say, can I have a 2 liter drink with me that weighs an extra 2 kilos? Drink it fast.
Yeah.
Carry less weight in the car for the distance. Although I don't know if you see like Fiona's been all over this, some of the fun, like the funny F1 side of stuff where, Kimi Raikkonen's driving along and he's like, did you connect my drink? And they were like, no, Kimi, no, you will not have the drink. Did you connect the drink? No, Kimi, you will not have the drink. And he's just constantly going through that. It's just fucking hilarious. So yeah, if you're gonna add the extra weight, drink it quick, use it quick. Make sure it's useful weight. Useful weight.
I like that. I like that. So I feel like we've got through a significant amount there, and there are so many more different things that we can go through in relation to strength, the benefits, the different types, how to improve it, how to work on it. There's so many more misconceptions. I think we've got at least 52 podcasts in there.
So when we get to episode, we're still good to be doing a few more. Yeah,
Yeah,
be all right.
yeah, we've not run out of ideas yet. So there are a few other things that we can still go through. If you have enjoyed listening to what we've been through thus far with this one, let us know. Let us know if there's anything strength related that you want us to go through. We are going to talk a little bit more about, what are the specific benefits of strength training, who can strength train. That's a big one. Then there'll be more misconceptions about like injuries and age limitations and gender differences. So I'm sure it's going to be a very, very good one.
What?
We'll Alex's brain with that one.
What?
So yeah, tons more exciting things to go through. Alex, do you have anything else you would like to say to add to the things that you've already kind of given us a huge insight on strength training and the importance of it in relation to strength conditioning within sports? Anything else you would add to what you've already said today?
Yeah. No, not for today. I think we're good for today. So what I would say is if you are unsure as to how any of this might apply to you, you want access to any training programs, you want a bit of guidance and you want to get strong for your sport, then make sure you keep listening to this podcast or drop us a DM on Instagram. My handle is Alex underscore Lenkowski underscore performance. Chris is exactly the same. It's Chris underscore Lenkowski underscore performance. You'll be able to find us there. So make sure you drop us a message. Just ask us some questions. We might even jump on a call, sit down and chat with you and explain a few specific things. And at the very least, help you on your way. If not, enjoy working with you in person on a more consistent basis to help you maximize and smash your results on the pitch or in your given sport, wherever, whatever arena that might be, whether it's in the court or on the lake. Just thinking of different things like kayaking, river, you know, put in
Yeah.
the
In the
different
air,
events and venues. Huh?
in the air,
In the like what? In the air?
flying.
In the Royal Air Force.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so whatever your training goals are, we have got programs and plans and our own experience and nous to help you piece things together and get the best results you could possibly achieve. So don't dilly dally, get on with it. Be a grown human about this. Don't be a child. We if we don't know you exist, we can't find you. So if you're listening to this and you want help, just put your hand up, shout out. Chris, do you need help?
Mentally, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that concludes episode number 96 of the Lenko Show. Make sure you tune in again for more. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so you get them just popped straight into your phone every time they drop. And we will be back again soon. That is it from me, Chris.
That is it from me. Thank you for coming along. Lenko out.